Another terminology that I want to tell you guys about is an angle bisector. And basically an angle bisector is a ray that will divide an angle into two equal parts, into two angles that have the same measure. So I'm going to demonstrate this with this picture down here. Here I've drawn an angle, and I'm going to create an angle bisector. And this isn't going to be necessarily 100% accurate, but you guys will get the picture. But what's going to happen is an angle bisector, like I said, is a ray. So I'm going to draw a ray. And that ray very specifically will cut this angle completely in half. That means that this angle and this angle are the same measure. And that's actually how we represent that. Whenever you see these little arcs, that tells you that those angles are the same degree. So if this is 30 degrees, then this one will also be 30 degrees. Now that you know what an angle bisector is, now we are going to construct an angle bisector. So I put up the steps here for you. Step number one is we're going to put the pointy end of our compass on point M, and we're going to draw an arc that goes through both sides of our angle. So I decided to use an obtuse angle just for fun. We're going to make a huge arc. We got to make sure that arc goes through both sides of our angle. Next, where the arcs cross the sides, we're going to put points on those spots. So I'm going to put a point here and a point here. I'm going to label those. I'm going to label this one P. I'm going to label this one Q. Now, we're going to put the pointy end of our compass on P. And I'm going to draw an arc out here. So I want to make sure that my compass is stretched out far enough. But once again, I'm going to put my pointy end on P, and I'm going to make an arc out here. Something like that. Without changing the width of the compass, I'm going to do the same thing with point Q. So I'm going to put the pointy end on Q, and I'm going to make that same arc. And what we discover here is that these two arcs intersect each other. If they don't, then you need to make the arc longer. And what I'm going to do now is with my straight edge, I'm going to line up point M with where those points intersect. And when I do, that makes that so that I have an angle bisector. That means that angle PM, and here I'm going to go ahead and mark this with a letter. We'll call this one R. That means that angle PMR is the same degree as angle RMQ. So both of those have the same measurement. I'm going to give you guys two more terminologies, and then we'll be done with this lesson. The first term that I'm going to give you is complementary angles. Complementary angles are basically any angles that add up to be 90 degrees. So I could have two angles that add up to be 90 degrees. I could have three angles or four angles, but just as long as they add up to equal exactly 90 degrees. Then my other word is supplementary angles. And supplementary angles are angles that add up to be 180 degrees. So once again, you're getting a lot of different angles if you have only two or three or four, but they have to add up to be 180 degrees in order to be supplementary. Now there's another special word that we can call supplementary. Linear pair. Now linear pair is when you have just two angles that add up to be 180 degrees. So when you have two angles that add up to be 180 degrees, you can call it either linear pair or supplementary angles. Both of those basically mean the same. Supplementary angles is when you count two or three or four or five angles adding up to 180, and linear pair is very specifically just two angles that add up to be 180 degrees.